Welcome, everyone, to this session. It's great to see many people here, and also welcome to those that are online. So this session, climate model data to assess climate impacts, adaptation, and mitigation strategies. My name is Erik Sandqvist. I'm a senior research advisor at the University of Bergen, and in the front row, the brains behind this session is my colleague Priscilla Mooney from NORS and the Bjerknes Center for Climate Research. So the session will be many talks, case studies of using climate data in various ways. We were very inspired to get such cases when we made this session, Priscilla, and we're also happy to receive so many excellent abstracts that we had to go through, and those that are here are carefully selected among those. And this session is so popular that it's part of this is the second following up on this morning. But without further ado, I will welcome the first speaker on stage. That's Igor Esu. He's a professor at the Arctic University of Norway and the Nansen Environmental and Remote Sensing Center. Your research, Igor, as you have presented it yourself, is focused on research problems related to the turbulence, atmospheric boundary layer, and local climate phenomena. So we very much look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. I see that microphone is working. I have 8 minutes, right? Yeah, so I must be quick here. Where is it? Presentation? Yeah. Okay. My talk has very long, intentionally long title, but it's unintentionally clumsy, unfortunately. Despite all this, the idea behind the talk, and I actually present the result of several projects. Some of them continue, some of them has been completed already. The idea is very simple. If we want to create a concrete climate assessment for local settlements, for local communities, is it enough for us to use global results of global climate modeling with probably some downscaling? The answer is that generally it's not enough. And the problem here is not only in resolution of the global or regional climate models, but also in the fact that many important physical phenomena, they are oversimplified or totally missed in those models, but they can play an incredibly important role for scenarios developed for local communities. If we start with traditional approach proposed by the International Panel of Climate Change, this is shared socioeconomic pathways, the Arctic perspective, and each pathway actually determine the type of simulations which are supposed to inform and support the decisions in different categories. Similarly, when we develop local strategy and local scenarios, we also can break the prospects of local development in several categories. And that's what we have explored with my colleagues from the Nansen Center, with Victoria Miles, in one of our projects, that when we look at those putative scenarios, probably the work of imagination, the different directions will require different accent in physical models. Some of them are more sensitive, for example, to presence of sea ice in the East Fjorden, and this presence of sea ice is regulated by Atlantic water and local circulation interplay in this area, which necessarily require very high resolution. Other scenarios are more sensitive to avalanches or stability of the ground in this area. So what is the methodology? Why we still do not use very actively our high-resolution climate models? We do have those climate models, and that we have shown in our work with colleagues from Pan-Eurasian experiments in several co-production sessions. We actually were able to create a common seamlessly integrated modeling platform. The work is now published in Big Data Journal. Mahura is the first author there. So why we do not use it still? And the problem is that there is a bottleneck of communication between us modelers who can understand physical climatology, numerical fluid mechanics, and people who actually develop those scenarios. And that problem is known. That problem has been addressed already in creation of this integrative socioeconomical pathways. As you can see here, this creation of such pathway goes through 4 steps. European project and work in our colleagues from social and managerial science actually identifies that it should be 6 steps in such approach where narratives of those scenarios diffusicated. And that means they produce, it needs to be a step where we produce from narrative, we produce concrete values of parameters and concrete numbers which will allow us to configure our model and run it. The whole system with this methodology has been described, as I said already in Mahura et al., seamless coupling and integrated approach. There are many details related to this, but in concrete work, we actually tried it in our Turban project, which has been completed in 2024 with quite some success. And in this project, we study how we approach this in different cities. One of the cities at our site, it was Bergen. Our partners were working with Prague and Helsinki. And in this approach, it was it became very clear then we need to be in dialogue with people representing, with communities of practice, representing these decision support systems to get what actually do they need to simulate with our quite complicated integrated tools. What parameters will be accepted? Talking about Bergen experience, for example, it was quite difficult and quite steep learning curve for us to understand that it is not possible just to put, say, emissions of different pollutions from cruise ships, for example, there, but also we need to take into account how those cruise ships are actually managed in the Bergen harbor. And when we were able to integrate this quite subtle, actually, development in the models, then interest to our results increase quite a lot. But also, it is important to emphasize the importance of interpreting system. You can scan this QR code to look at what we present in line of storylines and simulations approach, how the results of models and satellite data analysis is actually presented and told back to decision makers. Back to Arctic. The problem with Arctic is that local climate change is significantly larger than the global climate change. That is phenomena is known as Arctic amplification. This Arctic amplification is valid for the whole Arctic area, but it's even more valid, as was shown by Rantanen et al., and also in our work from joint project, ESA project, with our satellite colleagues working with satellite data, published in 2023, it was shown that this is even more true if we look at even smaller area. And it was mentioned somewhere here at the conference already that the largest climate change on the Earth was observed actually at the north of Svalbard, in the very local area. And that is impossible to know about such important for local communities, such important issues without actually resolving the local conditions, this interplay of open water, glaciers, and flows, air flows in fjords at this local area. So what we also done in some publications, we look at very high resolution Landsat data in longer viewing, and as you can see here, even this pretty small place, less than 3,000 people, pretty small place induce quite significant local temperature anomalies due to development of this place. And unfortunately, this development and these anomalies happens in the place where permafrost is very important. So these anomalies destabilize permafrost. And if you will be in longer view, you can actually see this and see what kind of measures, quite expensive, was done to stabilize this permafrost against these unintentional changes. So conclusions, just last point, and I point my finger to this plot. So urban heat islands, anomalies of temperature in Arctic settlements are significantly above the projected climate change. So we can go there, go in other cities, go in Tromsø, or whatever else in Arctica, and we can observe the changes which other territories will be experiencing in 20, 30 years from now. This is kind of natural laboratory, and that was open for us by analysis of high-resolution data and high-resolution models. And that, with that, I finalize my talk with main conclusions that local climate change are nuanced. And these nuances may involve physics, which is not presented in coarse resolution models. And therefore, high resolution model is not just given a detailization. They bring new physical aspects and new factors of risk and vulnerability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor. For time's sake, I think we have time for one question. We have a little bit. Is there a question in the audience? Well, if not, you can think a little bit about it, and you'll find Igor later as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'll ask our second speaker to get ready. Elana Gregorieva is a visiting researcher at the Humboldt University in Berlin. And your interests, as you say, cover a number of themes. And you will today present social vulnerability to bioclimatic challenges, Northern Norway, as a case study. I look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, organizers, to invite me to give an oral talk. It's a great pleasure and honor for me. And today I will talk about bioclimate in terms of human health, bioclimate and social vulnerability in the Arctic. I will show the picture for the whole Arctic countries that was for our main topic of the conference, Beyond Borders. And afterwards zooming to the Northern Norway as a case study. And I will use modeling and afterwards translating the results to the adaptation strategies. This project is financed by German Research Foundation, and thanks to my co-authors and colleagues from University of Alaska Fairbanks, Professor John Walsh and Vladimir Alexeyev for their contribution, and they are also my co-authors from the previous project that was financed by Fulbright Arctic Initiative. We know what is vulnerability, is how a system is adapting to those environmental challenges, and how society can be sensitive and vulnerable to the exposures to the challenges from the environment. Today I will talk about social vulnerability to the extreme climate conditions and looking at social sensitivity and social adaptivity, so-called social block, how society is going through the challenges and how society is adapting to them. And we will look at exposure as extreme climate. We know that climate now is changing, and changing in the Arctic very fast with warming, but still it's cold. It's really very cold, even with this warming. So how today I will talk more about challenges of cold climate. As exposure, this is general methodology, how to look at the vulnerability. So we have exposure that are indicators of extreme, it can be heat or cold climatic conditions. We look at social sensitivity, which is different indices, demographic, social, economic, that shows how sensitive society is. And we are looking at adaptive capacity, other indicators, social, economic, infrastructure, demographic indicators that show how society can resist and overcome those environmental conditions that are challenging the society. And in the method, I use not just temperature, but temperature in the another conditions around the body. There are a lot of more than 170 different indices, bioclimatic indices, that show how human body perceives temperatures, perceives thermal environment, which are temperature, humidity, wind speed, solar radiation, and personal attitudes. And I will use one of the most sophisticated and recently widely used method that is Universal Thermal Climate Index. That is a combination of temperature, humidity, wind speed, radiation, and two models, physiological and clothing model. These data are widely used, and you can find them in Copernicus, which I show later. First, I will look at the whole Arctic countries, 8 countries, and then zooming to the northern Norway. Exposure will be hours with UTCI below -27, which is threshold for very cold and extremely cold conditions, and several indices which show social sensitivity and adaptive capacity. I will not stop on that, I will take 2 decades starting from 2000 till 2019. And this is showing how the modeling is used. This data from Copernicus Climate Data Store and ERA 5 heat UTCI with 2 main thresholds, very strong cold and extremely strong cold. These are results for the first block. That is exposure, showing that despite warming, it's still very cold, and the coldness, this at the upper diagram showing Canada, Russian Federation, Denmark in terms of Greenland and Faroe Islands, and Alaska and the USA are the most cold areas. And this shows the sensitivity, social sensitivity in red, light red for first decade and dark red for the second decade. Green is for social adaptivity and for climate discomfort. And final results in purple, showing social vulnerability to extremely cold conditions, showing that Canada, Denmark, and Russian Federation are the most exposed and most vulnerable states in the Arctic. Zooming to Norway, 3 northern counties and data from Statistical Norway, and roughly the same methodology, just slightly different indices, which can be found in northern Norway statistics, and the results showing that Norrland is not as cold as Finnmark and Troms between, and conditions are slightly changing through decades. Actually, they are quite big changes through decades, but we are looking at the last 2. And the same for social block, social sensitivity and social adaptivity, and results for social vulnerability, showing that Norrland is, Finnmark is most vulnerable, Norrland not as much, and Troms in between, and slightly changes in decades. Why we are talking today about, we all are talking today about adaptive capacity. Why? Vulnerability depends on adaptive capacity. If we want to diminish vulnerability, we should work on adaptive capacity. That's not just for everything, for just conditions, climate conditions by themselves or changing climate. And what to do with this, adaptation strategies to human health challenges due to climate change in the Arctic. This is a recent paper published in this year in journal Climate, my paper review. So welcome to look at all this. I will not stop these adaptation strategies. This is just as a conclusion. And one more conclusion. Welcome to join us at a special issue of this journal, Climate Change in the Arctic. It's still open for submitting another couple of months. Or if you want, you can join even later. And as an active member and former vice president of the International Society of Biometeorology, welcome, join us, publish with us at the International Journal of Biometeorology, and joining us at the congresses. The next one will be in Novi Sad 2026. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Elena. It was a very interesting perspective. Has it raised any questions in the audience? Yeah, there is a microphone in the back that will be carried forward.
Yeah, so thank you for a nice talk. So my name is Tore Furuvik from the Nansen Center in Bergen. So I just wondered, there are lots of discussion about this severe impact of climate change, which is heat stress, and excess deaths due to heat stress in summertime. But then many people argue that there are more people dying of cold than of heat during a year, and that climate change is actually reducing the total number of excess deaths during a year or during a certain period. So what's the data on the Arctic? Will you say that the warming in the Arctic is that good for people's health, or is it actually a threat or a vulnerability of health situation in the Arctic? Thanks.
Still cold is the main stress for people, and more deaths in the wintertime than in summertime. I'm not aware about the cold heat waves and cold spells. That's the next step of the project, so that I will show the results later.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for a very, very interesting presentation. Then we're fortunate to welcome our next speaker, Shami Kaya. You have a very interesting background as an architect and a researcher, and you're specializing in sustainable urban planning and climate resilient design. We very much look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you all for this opportunity, and I'm really happy to be here because the earlier presentations, they are so much on the same synergies, so definitely it's worth discussing. So the topic that I'm going to talk about today is assessing urban vulnerability to extreme weather in cold climate cities, a revised weather vulnerability index incorporating seasonal vegetation effects. So the title itself is saying a revised weather vulnerability index because originally when we developed the index, we included a lot of variables and criteria, and then we have already tested it with the professionals from the municipality. And then we have tried to incorporate how they would like to use this kind of tool. So first, some common lines that we have been already hearing the whole evening or whole morning. Accelerated Arctic warming, a call for action. Arctic is already warming up faster than the global average. And it's not a polar problem only because it may or may not amplifying global weather extremes. Trees as climate shields dual role. So here I'm actually trying to address the aspect that there are multiple roles that vegetation can play, and because we are talking about the climate that is prone to both extreme cold and extreme heat waves potentially in the upcoming years, so we need to consider all the possibilities and how we could actually utilize vegetation. And the research from University of British Columbia highlighted that even a single urban tree could actually significantly improve environmental conditions by reducing wind pressure on nearby buildings and cooling effects during summer. And as an architect, I'm really interested in how we could actually build our cities in a more sustainable way. So our impact would be lesser, and we would maybe complain lesser also about what is happening with the climate. Ecosystem services of urban vegetation, a must for resilient cities. So how urban vegetation could contribute to the resilience of the cities, mitigating urban heat island effect. We all know about this, improving air quality, capturing carbon, and many others. But the challenge is not all trees are equal, because we need to think about the contextual situation, urban morphology, the tree traits, and the climatic conditions. This is where the research question is coming, how cities can use a systematic and quantitative decision support system for summer and wintertime resilience through greening strategies. And why the cities should be interested in this kind of decision support system. First of all, it would help them to identify vulnerabilities and what kind of opportunities can be there for improvement, selection and prioritization of measures, potential energy savings associated with each of the measures for heating and cooling, and what kind of interventions we are talking about here. We're talking about building type and locations that is related to the urban morphology, energy uses patterns and climatic conditions. Now the case study city that we have tested it in city of Joensuu, it is a very continental climate situation there. As you can see, we have very high temperature during summertime in record and also very low temperature. And if we look at the temperature anomalies, the standard deviation is anyway going towards positive. Here is the methodological outline. I will not go into too much detail, then it will be rather difficult to go to the results. But we have tried to incorporate a geographic information system for analyzing different morphological information related to building level data. So all the building related information, also we have considered U values that is associated of how the buildings are behaving for heating or trapping the heat. And then also the neighborhood scale data, which is resonating with normalized vegetation index, land surface temperature, solar radiation, wind speed. All these multiple criteria are included here. And in MCDA, it's actually, we have included the possibility for linear and nonlinear relationship between the criteria, so that we can, the planners or the experts, they can actually tweak what kind of utility, what kind of best utility we are looking for in a selected context. And we have received this information from the city of Joensuu, where they have been cooperating with city of Helsinki's Green Factor tool. And here in the scores, we can actually see that there are 13 different sample sites, and the scores that they have assigned to these different sites for their vegetation, it's not only associated with the NDVI values. It is also considering how the pavement is built, how the buildings are designed, is there are other environmental impact that is being caused by those buildings, and the scores are determined based on those multiple criteria. And we have received the initial score, and then in order to utilize in the index, we have normalized this from 0 to 1. And here in this slide, we can see that we have tested different kind of scenarios by tweaking the weights for the different parameters. And what is happening here is that we have divided the city in 250 meter by 250 meter grid, and it is allowing us for targeted area orientation, orientated intervention. So the city planner or the expert can actually then decide to zoom in and then look more into detail of the actual building level data, so that it will help the what is actually the most relevant strategy for that? Is the buildings or the built environment even suitable enough? Or is planting one tree is enough? Or do we need to do some renovation there? So it's more a holistic approach. Yes, and of course, it also allows us to set different weights for individual criteria, and also we can look into any specific criteria. For example, if we want to focus on the social dynamic, or we want to look at a specific vulnerable group inside the context, then we can change the weights for those criteria. So in the discussion, it's basically, what is the purpose of all this? It's basically helping us to include this MCDA so that we can address how we could tackle extremities and vulnerabilities posed by climate change. The utility of this proposed method is basically that it is allowing including multiplier for vegetation integrated with infrastructure and changes in built environment. And also user-centric advantages. It actually helps informed decision-making, supports clear communication of the proposed interventions to diverse audiences, because it's also easily translatable into maps to present to the stakeholders. And also it allows us to compare and quantify what kind of direct and indirect effects we are talking about. Yes. Thank you. Question.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It was very interesting. Are there any questions?
I have a brief question. Thank you. I have a brief question. I didn't get actually, do you account for change in atmospheric circulation in the city when you analyze these changes in surface properties and plans?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I got the question properly. Atmospheric circulation, do you mean the wind effect? Yes. We utilized the raster map from Global Wind Atlas, but that was combined with the air temperature to count, to calculate the chill index. So how cold you're feeling, or how cold, the cold effect in the microclimate level, so 250 meter by 250 meter grid, yeah. And also accompanied with other criteria, for example, how much sun the area is getting or not, yeah.
Is there another question? If not, they'll find you afterwards. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Please give her a hand on the way back. So our next speaker, yeah, please take the floor, is Marianne Williams-Kerslake. She's a PhD student at the Nansen Environmental and Remote Sensing Center in Bergen, Norway. And you have been where you're focusing on marine heat waves in the Arctic Ocean. We look forward to your presentation. Please.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. So yeah, I'll be talking about characterizing marine heat waves in the Svalbard archipelago and surrounding seas. So if you pardon the pun, marine heat waves have become a recent hot topic both in the media and in science. For example, this is an NRK article which details a marine heat wave in the Barents Sea last summer and the extreme temperatures that this marine heat wave brought. So what is a marine heat wave? Marine heat waves are commonly defined as periods when the sea surface temperature exceeds the 90th percentile. So what this means is, if we look at this distribution of temperature, we're looking at the top 90% of temperatures, and they're defined as a marine heat wave. Why do we want to look at marine heat waves around Svalbard? So this recent study by Huang et al. 2021 found a high frequency, so which means the number of events per year of marine heat waves around Svalbard, as you can see, detailed by this white box, which led us to focus on this region. So we focus, as I said, on Svalbard, but in particular we look at the west coast of Svalbard. So we call this Svalbard West. This region is influenced by cold Arctic water masses formed locally in winter and from the northeast. But also, perhaps more importantly, when it comes to marine heat waves, it's influenced by the West Spitsbergen current, which brings warm Atlantic water into this region and down the west coast. So to look at marine heat waves in this region, we use a reanalysis data set called TOPAZ. TOPAZ has a resolution of 12.5 by 12.5 kilometers, and we focus on the period 1991 to 2022. The good thing about TOPAZ when it comes to marine heat waves is it has 40 depth levels, so we can look at marine heat waves at the surface, but also see how deep they're going through the water column. And so because it's a reanalysis data set, it has observations fed into it, and these include sea surface temperature, sea surface salinity, sea ice thickness, and also in situ depth profiles of temperature and salinity. So if we focus on our Svalbard West region, shown in the plot on the left, in the background here you have the sea surface temperature anomaly average over this region, and then everywhere where there's a dot, it means the temperature on this day is exceeding the 90th percentile, so it could be a marine heat wave. So we find for our region, we're getting an increase in the frequencies, the number of marine heat waves, but also in their length. So the number of dots, they're getting considerably longer, particularly after 2010. And this seems to be paired with this, as you can see, a clear shift in the sea surface temperature anomaly in this region. So for our study, we focus in particular on this summer period from June to the end of September, and we focus on prolonged marine heat wave events lasting longer than 10 days, because these could have a greater ecosystem impact. Using this criteria, we end up with these 8 events for our region. So for each event, you have a category, so most of them are strong or moderate. You have the start date, the end date, and the duration. For each of these events, we then wanted to classify them using depth, and then you end up with 4 shallow and 4 deep events. So the classification we used was a shallow event was from 0 to 50 meters, intermediate event from 50 to 200, and then these deep events from 200 and greater. If we focus in particular on this strong event in 2016, which lasted 25 days, using TOPAZ, we can plot its spatial extent to see, we wanted to see if it was completely in our region, so the dashed black box, but also to see how far across the whole Barents Sea it extended. So this plot shows everywhere where the sea surface temperature in each grid cell is exceeding this 90th percentile. So you can see that this marine heat wave, on the start and the peak and the end of event, you can see the progression of it. So it not only was in our Svalbard West region, but also extended across the Barents Sea, so this was quite a widespread event. Using TOPAZ, we can then see how deep this event went, so how you can work out how we got the depth classification for this event. So in the background, you have the temperature anomaly, and then there's a dot for every day and every depth level where the temperature is exceeding this 90th percentile. So you can see for this particular event in 2016, it went down to 500 meters. So we then want to know what could be driving these events, in particular events that are exceeding all the way down the depth column to 500 meters. So one thing, so marine heat waves can either be driven by solar forcing, so from heating from the sun, or the advection of warmer water. So just for this presentation, I'll focus on the latter one. So we calculated the average ocean heat content for our Svalbard West region using this equation, so from 0 to 300 meters. And as you can see here, there's a positive trend in the ocean heat content for this region. So you have the grey line is just the seasonal cycle, the black line is the ocean heat content, and then it's red when it's above the seasonal cycle and blue when it's below. And you can see for each of our 8 events that you saw in the table, often they're during periods of quite significantly above the season. The ocean heat content is significantly above the seasonal cycle. So it could be driving these events. To look at this further, we then, for each event, the start date of each event, we calculated the ocean heat content anomaly. And we tried to sort of piece out what was happening when we saw these patterns. And we found that most shallow events appeared to be associated with an increase in ocean heat content in the pathway for the Norwegian Atlantic front current. So if we just look at the map on the left, I've highlighted the current in yellow. So it circles around the Lofoten Basin, and then it goes up to the west coast of Svalbard, where we're focusing at. And then if we look at the ocean heat content anomaly for this shallow event, if you can see it, you can see this quite high positive anomaly that seems to be following this current pathway. So this is something we'll look at further. In comparison, when we looked at the ocean heat content anomaly on the start date of the deep events, we found that the ocean heat content anomaly was higher in Svalbard West, so our boxed region here, but also higher for the full Barents Sea. So if I flick back between, you can see quite a difference in the ocean heat content anomaly between the shallow and deep events. And instead of being in this current pathway, we found that the ocean heat content anomaly was higher in the slope current, so highlighted in yellow, that follows the coast of Norway and then up the west coast of Svalbard, and also higher in the Lofoten Basin. So in summary, some key take-home messages. The frequency, so the number of events per year of marine heat waves, has increased on the west coast of Svalbard. And using our methods, we identified 8 individual submarine heat waves, so 4 shallow and 4 deep, with the deep ones exceeding all the way to 500 meters. And as we can see, the ocean heat content has increased west of Svalbard, which could be a reason for this increase in marine heat wave events that we see in this region. And the transport of heat by ocean currents appears to play a role in these onset of events, with a different impact on both shallow and deep events. And topaz can be an effective tool for looking at surface and subsurface patterns in marine heat waves. So thank you. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Are there any questions? Getting a microphone from the back there.
A neat PhD topic. I know you said that that you primarily analyzed transport, but is that because you believe there's no reason in that region to have solar heating change over time?
No, I'm looking at that next, so that's just this is just the results I have so far. Yeah, so I'm gonna topaz. You can actually get heat fluxes out, so the surface heat flux. So I'm going to do similar like I did with the ocean heat content anomalies. Look at a more local surface heat flux and see how that is for each of the events.
And partition between the two?
Yeah, I see a difference. Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Is there another question? So when we spoke, because I had the fortunate opportunity to have a trial presentation with you, we talked a little bit about stakeholder interest in your results. Would you like to share?
Yeah, so I'm with, I can show the logo. It's going to seem like a plug here, but we have a thing called Climate Futures in the corner, which works to have, it's louder, stakeholders work with scientists. So for the last part of my project, I want to look at the impacts of marine heat waves. So for then, when we look at this, we hope to work with stakeholders to see if there's like a particular way of identifying a marine heat wave that could help them, or if we can see certain impact areas that could be useful for them.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you again for a very interesting presentation.
Thanks.
So we're moving on to our next speaker, Dr. Joao Betancourt. Is currently a research fellow at the University of Bergen, and where you study the effects of climate change and anthropogenic pressures on marine sustainability. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So, as you can see by the title, I'm the second researcher based in Bergen that's bringing reanalysis data to a climate model data session. But the idea behind this is to look at how the changes in the hydrography of the Barents Sea that have been observed in the last decades, and also in and also the flow of Atlantic water into the Barents Sea, how this Atlantification of the Arctic waters, they have changed and they have ecological impacts. And in particular, we look at patterns of drift and dispersion in the Norwegian and the Barents Sea, especially because these patterns, they influence the early stage of commercially important fish species in that region. The way we identify the dispersion is that we use the finite-size Lyapunov exponent, which is basically a measure of the local rate of separation of nearby particles that we set initially at the delta zero distance, and then we set a scale, and we measure the amount of time that it takes for the particles to reach that separation. And so with this measure, with the finite-sized-Lyapunov exponent, we are able to identify local rates of dispersion. And by doing this in a systematic way, we can identify the trends in dispersion in a given region and also in a given period. And for this work, we use the Topaz 4 model as the underlying velocity field to compute the fields of the finite-sized-Lyapunov exponent at 40 meters depth in the Norwegian and the Barents Sea between 1993 and 2020. So this is the domain where we performed our calculations. I have also used these 4 boxes to later in the analysis. But the FSLE calculation, so we use the native velocity grid resolution as the initial separation. We set a distance threshold of about 50 kilometers, and the particles were integrated for 360 days with an integration time step of 24 hours. So the first result is an instantaneous map of the finite-sized-Lyapunov exponent, and this for the 1st of March of 2020, and it shows that the is there a pointer?
Yeah, just point it towards. Or ask them to take the next.
No, okay, no, but okay, I can show. So the main sites, you can see the main sites with high dispersion, they are all located along the Norwegian coast, and basically they follow the topography of the region. And so this is very important because we know that along the Norwegian coast, it's where we have the spawning grounds of the Barents Sea cod and also other commercially important fish species. So it's reasonable to assume that this dispersion will have an effect on the dynamics of those fish populations. So if we compare March and September, the 30-year average FSLE, we can also see that dispersion is much stronger in the Norwegian coast for March, which also coincides with the spawning season. And this is an interesting result because we can see that there is a match between the period where dispersion is stronger and also the period of the spawning season for those fish species. So this is just a spatial average for the Barents Sea. I'll admit I haven't looked into detail still for the Barents Sea, but you can see that there are stark differences between the spatial average between March and September. So obviously March during the years that we analyzed, we have a slight decreasing trend. However, for September, we can see that around 2010, there is a break in the trend. So before 2010, we had a decreasing trend that's actually statistically significant, but after 2010, we can observe an increasing trend. And this is something that I'll be looking at in the coming steps of this work. But now coming back to the Norwegian coast, so here we have a spatial average for those 3 boxes, for the 4 boxes. And you can see that in general, the dispersion is higher for March than for September. Over most of box 1, 2, and 3, we find there is a rather low period of dispersion around between 2000 and 2005, but then it recovers from 2005 onwards. And so since we know that the area that's covered by box 1, 2, and 3, they are dominated by the Norwegian coastal current. And we know that the variability of that current is controlled by the meteorology and also by freshwater discharges. And so we believe that the evolution that we see here in this dispersion measure is also an effect of the variability of the Norwegian coastal current. Another important factor to finalize the analysis is that there has been a reported relation between the recruitment of the commercially available fish with downwelling winds along the Norwegian coast. And so we tried to find a relationship between the FSLE and the upwelling or downwelling, and we did it by comparing the FSLE to temperature anomalies along the Norwegian coast that we got from the fixed hydrographic stations. And for all boxes, we found a negative correlation, although for boxes 1, 2, and 3, the trends are not statistically significant. However, for box 4, we found a statistically significant trend. But however, this hints at there is a negative correlation between the FSLE and the temperature anomalies. And so this implies that the negative temperature anomalies, which are associated with upwelling along the West Norwegian coast, they are associated to higher dispersion. And of course, then the downwelling that we know is related then the downwelling that we know is related to higher recruitment, then should be inversely correlated to the FSLE. And so this was just some preliminary results. However, we can already draw some conclusions, especially that we found a high dispersion along the Norwegian coast that coincides with spawning sites. And this dispersion is higher in March, is significantly higher in March than in September, and that matches with the spawning season. We also found a change of trend for the dispersion in the Barents Sea around 2010. And finally, we found a negative correlation between the seawater temperature and the FSLE, which indicates that the dispersion is controlled by upwelling along the Norwegian coast. And that was all I had to tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joao. While somebody thinks of a question, I will just let the technician know that the presentation has disappeared from the screen in front here. So if you have the opportunity to fix that. Is there a question for Joao? No? In case you stick around, and then maybe somebody will think of it till later. Thank you very much again. So we're moving on to our next speakers, which will be Lilia Hebrin-Beidi and Sophie Weeks from the Scott Polar Research Institute. We look forward to your presentation. And while they are getting ready, I can let the technician know it's still missing on the screen in front of them.
Is it working? Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Lilia, and this is my colleague Sophie. We are from Scott Polar Research Institute, University of Cambridge. And today we are very honored to have the opportunity to share our research with you, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts and feedback, because it's very important for how we develop our project in the future. So, in this particular project, we are focusing on phenomenon as an urban heat island effect. And I'm sure that many of you have known about this phenomenon. And this is potentially occurrence in Arctic city also. Yeah.
So why are there two of us here? My specialism is education and the role of education in research. And Leah and I are working together to put together a project that moves towards co-development. We think it's really important to involve the local population of Tromsø in our work, because we're looking at the urban heat island in Tromsø. So while Lilia does all the funky techie stuff with algorithms and imagery from space, my job would be to engage the local community in the science itself, so how Lilia does her work and how they might join in with that. In the course of that education work, we're hoping to open a dialogue to understand a bit more about what the concerns are in the local community about global warming, but also about local warming. And we're moving towards this idea of the co-creation of knowledge and research?
Yeah, so returning to background, which was prompted us to make our research actually, was that using climatic research time series analysis, we investigate that we have very pronounced trend of rising air temperature in Tromsø. This is analysis mainly for Tromsø Island, and especially during the spring and summer season. Moving forward, using Landsat time series data, we are combining with machine learning algorithms and other technical data models, sorry. We also established that we have a quite pronounced trend of land surface temperature increasing, and obvious during the summer months. On the other hand, we have done some quite smart analysis using Landsat data and PlanetScope as well for the early year, for the latest year, and we have created we have established some trend towards urbanization, kind of urbanization in Tromsø Island. So we have obvious values that we have decrease in green zones around 90% and increasing in artificial zones. Yeah, and of course, the result of this that we have very pronounced trend of land surface temperature, air temperature, and some kind of urbanization trend in Tromsø. We can expect that potentially we have occurrence of surface urban heat island effect for now, and we can identify particular spots where this surface urban heat island can appear.
So, just skipping back to the goals of the project, we will be engaging local communities in scientific research with the question in the back of our minds: how is this working, and how do the cities how are the cities changing in terms of their sunlight absorption? We want to have a look at this idea of land cover, which has come up several times, and see what the local people feel about it. And we are bearing in mind the nothing about us without us element of a research in the Arctic now, and engaging in the most diverse community that live and work in Tromsø. This is where the education bit comes in. So on the left, the typical kind of science communication models that are explored in research projects map quite nicely onto learning methodologies. And I know that all of those are measurable. So I'm going to be kind of working with these sorts of models and thinking about how we evaluate the success of the project. Oh yeah, this is just a really complicated slide to say. There's no point in tacking education work on at the end of a research project. It just doesn't work. So education and engagement, if you do want to move towards co-development, should be carefully planned into the project. This is just a small area of things that could go terribly wrong. So lots of things to bear in mind when you engage the local community. Community insights. So the last goal, the end goal, is this facilitation of co-creation of knowledge. I think both of us feel that we can't say we're doing it at the beginning, but we're exploring how maybe it could be done. And we're co-creating tools and resources to measure the surface heat temperatures in Tromsø and collect that data.
Yeah, so we would like to present our very early stage project, website, app, which can help us to engage community to the research process, and everyone can contribute through the report the land surface temperature, which is very easy to measure with the thermometer. But of course, you're welcome. Of course, scan the QR code and go through this website. And of course, we are looking forward to hearing your thoughts, because it's very important to improve our next step. And yeah, for who actually this website could be useful for young generation, especially for researchers, policymakers, community, and indigenous knowledge holders. Of course, this is not very easy application because we engage already artificial intelligence with, and it can verify our data, which will download this to this website. And how does Heat Watchers work? So it's very easy to measure temperature, report this, verify, and it's directly taken the weather condition, verify the object temperature, submit your report, sharing your thoughts, and be part of community to mitigate potential occurrence of urban heat island effect in your Arctic city.
So you skipped over a really cool bit there, where if you're measuring the temperature of your dog and saying it's the temperature of the road, the AI can slip in there and discard that as a measurement. I think that. Yeah, so we've come to the end because we can't come to a conclusion because we haven't begun things, and that's because we want to involve all the stakeholders right from the beginning. We have a little survey here. If you live in an Arctic city, if you work in an Arctic city, if you're interested in an Arctic city and you might be interested in participating in the project, please do the little survey. It's only a few questions. Thumbs at the ready, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. There's an open-ended question at the end. If you want to share your contact details, we'll be in touch. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lilia and Sophie. I hope people get their phones off while they're and filling out the survey. Are there any questions in the audience?
Actually, I would like to ask a question which people ask me many times. Who care in the Arctic about the urban heat island?
Who care?
Well,
I think he said, who cares?
I think it would be fair to say that we're not going to make any speculations about that. That's the point of the project. So when you, for example, engage, I don't know, a group of school children, for example, it could be a group of fishermen as well, but in the idea of measuring heat with a thermometer and kind of explain how that might work in terms of Lilia's satellite data, and then get them to put their data in their own personal little folder of data wherever they're working or living in Tromsø. Maybe concern will grow, maybe it won't, but I think it's very difficult to gauge concern without kind of engaging people and finding out. So we're in the finding out stage, and we're creating mechanisms and methods and approaches to allow that information to come to us.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the questions, Professor Zhao. We will take into account your questions, and we will consider it. Yeah.
Yes, we have one more question. Two questions. We have time for that.
Hi, I'm definitely not a heat wave expert or anything, not my field, but I just want to know, what is the purpose of being able to measure the different objects like trees and streets? Why not just measure the air temperature or something?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very good questions, and because as we were presented that it's very important when how urban heat island can occur in the city, yes, because it is tendency to kind of replacement natural land cover by the artificial structure, and this can be evidence that to prompt to occur the urban heat island effect. That's why community need to start to understand this and make some action to, yeah. Thank you, sorry. I hope I can answer your questions a bit.
Yes, last question.
Sure, if we have time. I really admire any approach that takes a novel assessment to observations, so I think this is really cool. And I'm going to do the classic thing that's going to couch a question as a comment.
Okay.
One thing I've thought quite a bit about is these small Bluetooth sensors that people can adapt to their homes, and it seems like you're very technically adept. There's probably very clever ways that you could get people to use these to make observations around and to integrate them with the same methods you have, and I think that would be very cool.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any help you can give with those, that would be greatly accepted. So do go to the survey and give us your... did I push you off the stage?
I'm here.
That's not very good.
Thank you very much again
Thank
for the presentation, and thanks to the audience for engaging and helping you. We wish you best of luck and look forward to seeing the results maybe in Tromsø next year or the year after. Thank you again. Then for our final talk of the session, we will go online. We will have somebody joining us online, so while the technician is finding her. Welcome, Katie. You hear me?
Hi there, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent, and I will shortly introduce you, and then I will let you start. So Dr. Katie Florko is a postdoctoral fellow at the Fisheries and Oceans in Canada, where she works on marine mammal distribution across the Canadian Arctic. We very much look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. I'm just seeing that sharing is not enabled here on my end.
So Katie, if you hear us, we are working on it in the back, and we'll let you know as soon as we can see our presentation here.
Thank you.
This year own presentation. We are also getting the presentation up now, and we're just waiting for the video of you showing on the screen as well, so the audience can see you. And then I will let you know when everything is clear. Okay, you are good to go. We look forward to your presentation once again.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that technical support, and thank you everyone for joining in on my virtual talk. I'm calling in from Vancouver in Canada, and I'm excited to share some of the work I recently completed during my PhD at the University of British Columbia. Today, I'll be discussing some ecological studies on ring seals and polar bears in the Canadian subarctic, as well as the importance of embracing complexity in our ecological models, which is probably the take home of a lot of people's PhD work. The Canadian Arctic supports diverse marine food webs, including marine mammals, that are vital to both these ecosystems and Inuit communities. While much of the Arctic marine mammal research in Canada focuses, rightfully on the effects of sea ice loss, it often overlooks the interacting effects of prey dynamics and predator pressures, and these are factors that are crucial for understanding ecosystem resilience. So ring seals are mesopredators, or middle predators, which means that they're influenced by both prey availability and intense pressure from a specialized predator like polar bears. So seals must make decisions based on these combined pressures alongside changes to their physical habitat. Hudson Bay is a large inland sea in Canada. It's essential for the rapid ecosystem changes happening across the Arctic. So to understand ring seals' behavior, we deployed satellite transmitters on over 50 seals in Hudson Bay, collecting over 300,000 dive records and over 100,000 estimated locations over 3 years. Since Hudson Bay lacks empirical fish data or predictions, we developed a model to predict the biomass and distribution of marine mammal prey to better understand their spatial ecology. So we focused on the 8 main prey species for Arctic marine predators so that we could expand this beyond just ring seals. The models we used relied on climate model data as drivers. So for example, sea temperature, pH, oxygen, et cetera. And we looked at the CMIP5 projections of these through the end of the century. So here they all are. Each row here is an environmental covariate, and the columns are early 2000s, mid-century, and late century. The line graph shows how these environmental variables over time change under 2 climate change scenarios. So in blue, we have the low emission scenario, and in red, the high emission scenario. That's our business as usual trajectory. Our model then predicts changes in the biomass abundance and mean body size, as well as the distribution for each of these 8 main prey species. And what we see here is that under the low emission scenario on the left, we have 2 main prey species that are dominating the Hudson Bay system, capelin and cod. And under the low emission scenario, there's not much change over time. But under the high emission scenario, overall biomass increases, the composition shifts, and the system becomes more diverse. And if we look at it through space, we see that Arctic cod, our ice-associated species, declines throughout, capelin increases throughout, and these 2 species of sandlance increase in the southern and coastal regions. And of course, these are just modeled predictions, but this does concur with findings from bird and beluga diets, suggesting that there is this broader ecosystem change going on. But what does this mean for our ring seals? Well, much research, as I mentioned, focuses on the effects of sea ice loss on seals. Our work shows that the prey base shifts occur simultaneously, adding to the changing system that these seals live in. So next, we examined how seal movement and space use aligned with these prey data. So to infer behavioral patterns from those satellite transmitters, I used a movement metric called move persistence, which is a way of quantifying whether animals are moving in a straight line, like traveling, or more slowly and turning frequently, like foraging. So here's a sample track from one seal. And imagine there's equal time intervals between each of these locations. On the left, the animal takes shorter, more frequent turns. This would be low persistence, often thought to indicate foraging behavior. While on the right, the track straightens out with longer steps between these locations, which would be high persistence, often thought to indicate traveling. So deciphering this type of behavior is especially important for identifying critical habitat and areas where certain behaviors occur. So we modeled this seal movement and this move persistence here against these prey metrics that we modeled, including the individual species biomass, total prey biomass, as well as prey diversity. And in all of our models, prey diversity came up as being the most important thing for the seals, which makes sense, but surprisingly, our results really challenged our assumptions here. So we found that seals were foraging more in areas with lower prey density, which is kind of the opposite of what you would expect. So this suggests additional drivers of behavior. This finding really questioned our simplistic view that prey diversity alone dictates movement and energy budgets for these predators. So clearly we were missing a crucial factor. And that missing factor was predator pressure, polar bears. So we deployed GPS collars on 18 polar bears, collecting over 20,000 locations over these same 3 years. This allowed us to create daily prediction maps of prey pressure. So then we had, for these seal models, we now have the polar bear risk, we have the prey diversity data, and we also had the environmental covariates such as sea ice concentration. So for this study, we focused in on the winter time when Hudson Bay completely freezes over and the bears are on the ice hunting the seals. And what we found was this avoidance behavior. So each of these dots are seals, and we can see our polar bear prediction in the background. And it appears that seals are, avoiding these high risk areas, which are the brighter areas. And I really want to exemplify how much including this additional complexity in the food web was a game changer for the perspective of seals. So the first result I'll show here is ring seal habitat selection relative to prey diversity. If we just look at prey diversity and seal habitat selection, there's not a relationship here. However, when we add an interaction with polar bear use, we see how polar bears modify this relationship, where seals are more likely to spend time in low-risk areas unless prey diversity is high, than seals traded safety for food. And similarly, dive duration followed, kind of the same pattern. Not much of a relationship between prey diversity and dive duration, but when we considered polar bear risk, seals dive longer in low-risk areas unless prey diversity was high. And for seal movement behavior, incorporating predator pressure really gave us a much clearer picture. So here on the right, we see there's a positive relationship between move persistence and polar bear use, which essentially means that when risk is low, the seals are doing more foraging-like behavior. And when risk is high, they're doing more traveling behavior, likely just moving through the area and getting out of there. And on the left is an activity budget for seals, and this is colored by the seal's behavior, where darker colors are more foraging-like behaviors. So on the left is this low-risk areas, and we're seeing that they're doing a lot of foraging-like behaviors in these low-risk areas. And then on the right, they're doing a lot more traveling. And that super foraging color, which is the black color, is virtually absent in the high-risk areas. So these results demonstrate how predator and prey pressures jointly influence seal behavior, leading to increased energy expenditure and shifts in habitat use. These are both key factors in understanding these interconnected challenges for seals. And so one of the overarching lessons for my PhD is the need to incorporate these compounding effects into our Arctic ecological models. Conservation strategies must consider how these interacting drivers, like prey shifts and predator pressures, alongside environmental change, really influences a species behavior. So I made 3 prediction maps here for seals. So first we have a model based on a model with just prey data. The second one is based on a model with just predator data. And the third is a model incorporating both. And we see that the areas, they're small changes in the important areas, but they are changes nonetheless. And so I think these maps illustrate how embracing complexity allows for more accurate predictions and better informed conservation strategies. Ring seals face cascading challenges, diminishing sea ice, shifting prey, and predator pressures. And these interconnected changes reflect the broader Arctic story, where no single driver acts alone in isolation. So I think by embracing complexity, we can build more effective models to conserve this rapidly changing region. So with that, I have a huge list of people to thank, including my co-authors, funders, and especially the community of Santa Kilowac, where the seals were taken. Thank you.
Katie, I hope you heard the applause you got from the audience. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any? Yeah, we have one question for Katie in the front here. Yeah, okay, just thumbs up. Any questions? If not, we thank you again, Katie, and good luck with the rest of the PhD study. And with that, yeah. And with that, we conclude our session today. I would like to thank all the presenters, those of you who came for the second of 2 sessions today. I would like to thank all the presenters, the audience both in here and online. And yeah, we hope the discussion continue over coffee and tea break, which starts now. Thank you again.